I'm Nolan Beilstein, and welcome to another episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing, a podcast where I interview young people about their journeys in the manufacturing industry. For this episode, I welcome Ankur Verma, a 26-year-old Ph.D. candidate in Industrial and Manufacturing Engineering at Penn State University. Verma is also the co-founder and CEO of Lightscline, a company that offers AI-based data reduction software. Verma said his interest in manufacturing began in high school in Western India and cited his father's background as a professor of mechanical engineering. Verma has held internships with GM and Tata Technologies, was awarded a National Science Foundation Innovation Corps mini-grant, is a recipient of the Diefenderfer Graduate Fellowship in Entrepreneurship, and most recently was recognized by SME as one of the 2023 30 Under 30 honorees. Before we hear from Verma, please make sure to like and share this episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing. If you are a member of Gen Z and would like to discuss your experience in the manufacturing industry, please get in touch with me, Nolan Beilstein, at nolan@ien.com. Yeah, thanks for joining Gen Z in Manufacturing. You mentioned that you had an interest in manufacturing and engineering in high school and that your dad worked as a professor of mechanical engineering, but I was kind of curious what drew you to smart manufacturing.
Yeah, that's a great starting question. So I was fortunate enough to grow in the western part of India, and at that time, that part of India had a lot of special economic zones. And given my dad's background, that helped me in the initial days. Once I got into university, I got exposed to Industry 4.0 during my sophomore year. From there, I went to do an internship in Germany during my junior year, and that internship was at Smart Factory, which is in Fraunhofer Institute, which is one of the best applied research institutes in Europe. And that really got me into the uh, into the depth of Industry 4.0 smart manufacturing. And from there, I came for a direct PhD at Penn State, which is the first industrial engineering department in the entire world. So that's how I got into smart manufacturing.
And what inspired you to create Lightscline, and what do you hope it achieves?
Yeah, so Lightscline has been the evolution of Lightscline has been through my bachelor's thesis, which I worked on in 2019. At that time, the whole idea was to make legacy lathe machines with small manufacturers smart, because they could not simply discard all those machines given that we were entering in this era of Industry 4.0. So we thought, let's put some sensors, IoT gateways, and make these machines smarter. But over time, while working here at Penn State, also I realized that the real value is in being able to deliver the analytics to customers. And over there are a couple of big challenges. As we continue the digitization of the physical world, we are going to reach 73 plus trillion gigabytes of data just by 2025, which creates massive data infrastructure costs and human capital cost, and also a lot of time to analyze all of this data. And that led to the germination of the idea at Lightscline, wherein we asked a counterintuitive question as to, can we teach machine learning techniques to collect less data upfront so that there is much less data to analyze for us. And that's how I got started with Lightscline.
What are some challenges that come with being a Gen Z entrepreneur in the manufacturing industry?
As Gen Z, we grew up with all these digital tools like computers, and the way we learned most of the things were through YouTube and stuff, whereas these were very different for the older generations. So just some of the language that we take for granted and the way we talk, sometimes that can be a barrier for communication. But I think the only way to overcome this is to try to talk and to force yourself into more of these situations, which I have been fortunate enough to do with the supportive ecosystem here.
As you work with professionals from other generations, how have you influenced older professionals, and how do you think they've influenced you?
One of the best things I've heard through all these customer discovery calls is, even though people may say that they are currently not they do not have enough sensors to look for new approaches, but everyone has at least been refreshed by this counterintuitive idea that there is a lot of redundancy and we actually don't need to collect it. So most of them have said that whatever you are working on right now, maybe not just within the next 6 months, but this is going to be invaluable for us in the near future. So that basically helps establish an instant connection when they see that, okay, this is a deep foundational problem, not maybe in the next 4 or 5 months, but definitely in the next couple of years. So that has been really helpful to communicate with these potential customers. For me, the biggest learning experience has been what is the level of digital penetration in all these industry verticals, and then also more on the people problem side of things. Like technology is one, but specifically like people. So who will be the end user, and then why someone can be a saboteur of this type of technology, and then whom do we need to talk with. For example, with enterprise customers, we need to talk at different hierarchical layers, starting with the end users and then going to the decision maker. And the way we tell the same value prop to these different people is very different. So that has been a very good learning curve for me.
And how have connections with other members of Gen Z influenced your career?
Yeah, on multiple fronts, starting definitely with my friends and my co-founder. So my co-founder and me happen to be working on this since like 2019. So he's also same as my age. We have been working together. My colleagues in my lab all are similar to my age. So we have a good healthy clash of ideas working on all these new neural networks, transformer techniques, so that. And then also within, when I do these customer discovery calls, I get to talk with technical people like data scientists and machine learning engineers, but then also young career people in the business and marketing sides. For example, business development representatives, account executives, and they have in fact helped me to learn some of the techniques as to how do you talk with customers, how do you try to close a sales deal, and so on. So I think a broad spectrum of Gen Z conversations has helped me both from a technical and business perspective.
Do you ever find that when you're having these conversations with customers that they're surprised by your age?
Not a lot surprised. They are definitely intrigued by the approach that we are taking. That is one. And then I think the level of depth that we are going to, I'm able to go into with these conversations, that helps establish some trust, and then also some background on the traction and the research work that we have been able to publish. All those things help as a validation point. So I haven't seen my age being a surprising element thus far.
How do you value the role mentors or advisors have for young professionals in manufacturing?
I think it's very important. I have been fortunate enough to have a lot of very good mentors, right from my undergrad professor to the professors in Germany, and now my professor, Dr. Kumara, who is the father of smart manufacturing. Similarly, I've been fortunate enough to work with some potential investors and some of the advisors on our startup. On our startup, so they have been very helpful. And the main thing I see that mentors do is basically they help us make these step changes, which would take us a long time if we did not have that point, if we did not have that guidance.
You have experience working in multiple countries, India, Germany, and now the United States. How does America's opinion of Gen Z workers compare to other countries' mindsets of Gen Z workers?
Yeah. I would like to double click on like one specific example that I've seen in Germany and the US. So in Germany, they have this very strong ecosystem of small manufacturers called the Mittelstand. And it's almost the German economy is based on these manufacturers. So they build very specific equipment, for example, some a laser that goes into powder bed fusion manufacturing and such, but they will be the only producer in the world that makes that particular product. And what that does is it even in the US, this is true. It's manufacturing is the occupation with the strongest job multiplier effect of like 2.5 or something. And so within Germany, this creates like local pockets of innovation. Within US, now we are starting to see this happen a lot with like the smart manufacturing and the distributed manufacturing, especially like in the I've been following the startup space. So in the on the West Coast with cities like El Segundo, SpaceX, and all these big companies are there. But now this distributed sort of manufacturing is starting to come into place. So I think this is a really good model because this encourages regional growth and the job multiplier effect. And I'm really happy to see this in both like Germany and US, this model of localized distributed manufacturing.
What specific strengths does Gen Z offer to smart manufacturing?
Yeah, I think Gen Z is, first of all, they are really tech savvy. So they grew up with all these like digital tools. And I have found that it's easier for me to teach newer things. For example, even sensor data analytics or how to analyze a large amount of data. So the time to teach them will be much smaller because they already know the tools like Python IDs and Jupyter notebooks, and then how to program. So they are much more digitally tech savvy. That is one, because it helps them to learn all these tools that we need. For example, programming, Python programming using IDEs, and then creating cloud APIs and all those things. Number one. And then number two, I think if we communicate the vision and the mission with Gen Z people, then it becomes easier for them to engage and then get creative ideas out of them, rather than imposing certain tasks wherein they may not necessarily feel that they are contributing to the larger goal. So I think if these two things are set right, then in my experience, I have seen Gen Z get excited about some of these smart manufacturing topics.
Beyond technical expertise, what skills do you think Gen Z needs to be successful in the manufacturing industry as a whole?
Yeah, great question. So, um, I think technical expertise is, as you said, like just one of the pieces. A huge piece is like how to deal with the workforce or like other people on the manufacturing floor or in design and so on. So that is one. And then I think the learning curve in manufacturing can be really fast, because for a lot of roles, you need to understand the entire value chain of like how do you design something, and then what are the possible ways of manufacturing it, and then what happens down the supply chain, who are your distributors and so on. So I think there's a lot of learning curve. There's a very fast learning curve if Gen Z becomes passionate about it, which I think can be improved through better communication on the companies and the employers' parts as well.
And how do you see traditional manufacturing industries adapting to the approaches and innovations that Gen Z has kind of championed and created?
Digital transformation is probably the right kind of word, because Gen Z is more interested into this, and then we are also seeing a lot of effort from different manufacturers, be it OEMs or small contractors, them investing heavily into this. And this also makes sense because if you look at the US, there are uh, around like 250,000 small medium manufacturers, out of which more than 98% are small medium manufacturers. So meaning like less than 500 employees. And as more and more of the age of the workforce ages, it is imperative that we bring some of the digital tools and also motivate Gen Z to get into this, because manufacturing is directly tied to the 2.6, like the job multiplier effect, and it contributes, I think, around 10% to the GDP. So this digital transformation, I think, is really going to be the key which pulls Gen Z into smart manufacturing.
And again, comparing Germany to India and the United States with the Gen Z workers, do you feel like the Gen Zs in the US are as passionate about getting into manufacturing as the other countries that you've spent time in?
I would say right now, specific parts I have seen more, wherein people are talking about manufacturing a bit more. But it's definitely, according to my experience, this is much more prevalent in Germany, because they already have a very strong apprenticeship system wherein they necessarily don't have to do a 4-year degree, but they can go work in CNC shops and so on. Fortunately, this is happening a lot in the US also. I think there are a lot of programs by Oak Ridge National Labs and Department of Energy which are encouraging these things. So I'm hopeful that this accelerates in the US also.
And just generally, how can manufacturing employers attract the young talent?
I think better messaging is probably the most important thing, because me in my own like startup work, I always keep rethinking about like what is the best one-liner to sort of communicate the bigger picture. For example, if I just say that we are analyzing large sensor data by doing something, that is sort of a technical narrative. But if I say that we are rethinking the Shannon-Nyquist sampling theorem, which was developed in the 1940s, which basically disrupts the way we do scientific computing, that is a much more appealing narrative to people who have some technical knowledge and also who can see the future. So I think the most important thing is the narrative. I am also increasingly seeing this in the trade shows and conferences that I'm going. For example, some of the traditional manufacturers of large heavy equipment, they are starting to show that they are actually digitally advanced to basically attract more internship positions and more full-time hirees. So I think better messaging and then actually showing some of the use cases connects better with Gen Z.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the talking points I had. Was there anything you wanted to add that I didn't ask about?
I would just say that the way we look at manufacturing can be boring at sometimes, but I would encourage people to look more into like some of the exciting things, and then follow a couple of good YouTube channels like How Stuff Works and stuff. And the details of it, once you are sort of attracted to anything, go build out a project and then see where you can go. So I think this can be a good segue for people just to explore, get started with a project and then see where it takes them. And hopefully some of them might find manufacturing to be really useful and exciting.
Thank you for watching this episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing. Please make sure to like and share the episode. If you are a member of Gen Z and would like to discuss your experience in the manufacturing industry, please contact Nolan Beilstein at nolan@ien.com.